They're not going to foul. The Heat will let it play out. It's over. At last, the long wait is over. After 47 years, the Denver Nuggets can finally call themselves NBA champions.
All right, hello everyone. Welcome back to Basketball in the Mountains. I am your host, Tyler King. This is episode 18. It's been a little bit. Haven't talked since the first two games. After the first two games between the Nuggets and the Clippers, but that series is obviously now over. The Nuggets blow out the Clippers 120-101 in Game 7 on Saturday at Ball Arena. Just a stunning game all around, not one that I was expecting from the way it panned out. Close first quarter, but then Nuggets really cruised from there on out, especially in that really impressive third quarter. I think there was like a 15-0 run, a 15-0 run, a 24-2 run at one point. Just a complete ass kicking, if you will, by the Nuggets against the Clippers team that didn't really seem up to the task or really interested at all in participating in the game, despite a decent number of fans making the trip from LA and making their presence felt early. But very comprehensive victory for the Nuggets, who I picked to win in 7. Didn't expect Game 7 to go that way, but the series kind of was as advertised outside of Game 7. It was a really fun drag-out, knockout series. Nuggets just deliver the final blow and had just enough to get past a really good Clippers team that was, I talked about this before the series, one of the more impressive teams since January 1st, probably second in the West to Oklahoma City, but they're still the Clippers. They definitely are the Sixers of the West Coast, if you will, which is kind of their playoff history. And now they have a long off season of kind of figuring out what's next for them, despite most of the roster being set in stone for at least the next year or two. But we're going to talk about Nuggets Game 7. We're going to talk about the upcoming series against the Thunder, which gets started right away. Recording this on Sunday afternoon, tomorrow night on Monday. Very quick turnaround for the Nuggets to face a Thunder team that have had a long time off since they swept the Grizzlies in the first round, as I predicted in that one as well. So to do so, I've got my Denver Gazette colleagues on with me today with both Vinny Benedetto and Schmaedeke coming on. Guys, thanks for doing this and hopping on here to talk about for a very quick turnaround. Vinny, I know you're flying to OKC tomorrow. Hopefully, fingers crossed, your flight is as smooth as possible, so there's no issues there. But first, before we talk about the Thunder, I do want to talk about this Game 7 because it was so unique from a Nikola Jokic and Jamal Murray only scored 32 points combined. I just thought that was never would have expected the Nuggets to win a Game 7 like that. Vinny, you and I talked about this after the game in the video we did on the court. It was kind of the everyone else game, and that was highlighted, I think, by the Christian Braun to Aaron Gordon lob dunk that put the Nuggets up 28 in the third quarter. That ended that 24-2 run I was talking about. First off, Vinny, that play was pretty incredible, and just seeing those two guys step up in that moment, is that just kind of the encapsulation of what the Nuggets were hoping for with this group, still with the championship potential?
Yeah, and going back and watching that replay, like Aaron Gordon doesn't even like really catch the ball. It's like all fingertips. It was just
it felt like he didn't really even dunk it. He just kind of like guided it to the rim,
placed it into the hoop.
Yeah, and that's what like you watch Aaron Gordon enough. He's so good at catching and like turning a lob into a reverse dunk. Sometimes it feels unnecessary.
Yeah.
But it also is like remarkable to me how you have like the body control to jump, twist, and like still locate the rim. I don't know. Not something I have a ton of experience with throwing down reverse lobs. But yeah, and I think, kind of most impressive about both those guys' plays, what they had to do on the defensive end over the course of the series, and to have those two guys be your leading scorers in Game 7, I think really, really pretty impressive, and certainly couldn't have predicted that those two guys would be the guys kind of carrying the torch offensively in a win-or-go-home game.
Chris, as someone who enjoyed yesterday's game as a fan, did you kind of ascend onto a higher plane on that play? I mean, just the Clippers aren't really like a hated opponent. I feel like obviously the other LA team kind of holds that mantle for Nuggets fans, but to see the Nuggets win a game in that fashion, and like I keep coming back to that play because it was just so stunning in real time to see Christian Braun be the guy to do the lob. And then like Vinny has talked about with the body control and Aaron Gordon, even after all the many dunks I've seen him throw down at Ball Arena, it gets better every time. It feels like. Just what was that like for you, Chris? Watching that game and seeing it unfold, especially in the third quarter.
Well, it was amazing because, like you said, like he never caught the ball. It was on his fingertips, and he just like got it in the hoop. And like you said, it was during that run. The crowd is unbelievable at that point. I don't think fans hate the Clippers, but I do think fans hate James Harden. And I think
that's a common sentiment around the league at this point, I feel like.
I think I really enjoyed, and I even explained this to my kids who are big basketball fans, like I loved Christian Braun frustrating him in these games, like just under his skin, picking him up three-quarters court. Not really. I think Harden only had a couple of like the rake, like brush fouls that he sometimes gets. I think there was a couple of those. I mean, Christian Braun is just a stud. And we've talked about this team's future. They have to pay him too at some point. And he is part of this core, and the guy's just a winner. And Nikola Jokic said that after the game. And I just think as we talk about the next series, he's going to be just as big, if not bigger, in this next series.
And Chris, for you, does this make up for the Game 7 loss to the Wolves last year, or did you feel like no, nothing? Did you feel like that? I kind of felt like the Nuggets were going to struggle in that West Conference Finals just with how much of a grind that was. But I'm sure maybe you felt like that was kind of a championship run missed by that.
Yeah, I think last year was a missed opportunity. I've talked to our editor Paul Klee about how I hate how last year almost felt wasted a little bit with that loss in the playoffs. Vinny and I have talked about this on the Denver Gazette Sports podcast. They just matched up really well with Luka and that Dallas team. The Nuggets did. And I thought that they kind of missed an opportunity. So no, and I love Anthony Edwards, but I just wish he didn't play for a team the Nuggets have to play 4 times a year.
Yeah, I can understand. I've said for a while, I think it's been almost 2 years. I think even dating back to that first time they played each other in the first round in 23, that Anthony Edwards is like one of my favorite players in the league to watch, and quickly became maybe my favorite player to watch just as a neutral spectator. And I kind of do agree with you, Chris. Like I selfishly, I think us as basketball fans were robbed in at least one of the last couple of years of seeing the Nuggets and Celtics play in the NBA Finals, because they've kind of been the two defining teams of the decade to start, at least. But Vinny, I just want to, before we move on to the Thunder, I wanted to get some general thoughts on the Clippers series, because like it is a very quick turnaround and there's another series coming up tomorrow, but that was a very, very impressive series win for the Nuggets. And there's so much that happened across those 7 games. But the question I want to start off for you is, who was more impressed? Who was more surprising in the series to you, Christian Braun or Russell Westbrook?
Probably Russell Westbrook. I mean, I just can't believe that there were times in this series where the Nuggets needed Russell Westbrook's shot making, and he delivered.
When's the last time anyone has ever said that?
I don't know. I don't. I feel weird. It feels weird coming out of my mouth, but it feels like the truth. And like he's always going to bring the energy and the intensity. And that self-aware quote he had last night, I think was
all-timer, man.
Was pretty impressive how he's able to
He's so good.
He's reached a point like he understands what it is. He is willing to live with the results, and he's not changing for anybody. And I think one thing the Nuggets did well this season is kind of give Russ the space to be Russ. They didn't try to force him to fit into a box or fit into a role. The Nuggets accepted what it was going to be, and there were obviously brutal times like the last Minnesota game of the regular season where he misses a layup and fouls a 3-point shooter that, if that doesn't happen, is Michael Malone coaching this team in the playoffs right now? I think there's a decent shot. There was, Russ missed another big layup in, what was that, game 6? So, layups can be hard, but when you're hitting threes, when, Jamal Murray and Nikola Jokic are slow to get going in a game 7, I think somehow Russ's shot making made up for all of the ups and downs that are part of the Russell Westbrook experience.
I do just want to read that quote because it was we don't get Russ a lot during the season because he's just a guy that doesn't really like talking to the media all that often. But we kind of got him going after the game yesterday. Vinny, obviously you had the very famous tweet that has gone very viral now with what Russell Westbrook said on the way into the locker room. Basically the new Tobias Harris over me quote with Russell Westbrook basically saying pick the wrong guy, basically, in regards to the Chris Dunn trade last offseason. But I asked Russ after the game about if that was the happiest he's ever gotten to get a tech when he hung on the rim for 5 seconds. I did count it out. It was about 5 Mississippis. And then after that, Bennett Durando from the Denver Post asked him if he's kind of having an out-of-body experience on the court at times, which he said no, but it prompted that very self-aware quote, which I will read. He said, "My ability to be a force of nature on the floor is what I pride myself on, whatever that looks like. It may be a turnover. It may be a missed shot. It may be a steal. It may be a dunk. It may be a missed three. It may be a made three. It's going to be all of that. Just take it for how it goes, and whatever happens, you go with it. And I've always been like that as long as I leave it on the floor. And God willing, I'm grateful to be able to go out and continue to compete." Just an all-time quote. And Chris, for you as a fan, like this entire season, the Russell Westbrook experience, it started off according to script. It goes well for a couple of months, and then, like Vinny, we've talked about a lot on this podcast, the Minnesota game and the smoking, the very infamous last 10 seconds of that double overtime. To see it work out so well in the playoffs, how rewarding was it for you just to kind of be the first fan base in a while to enjoy the Russell Westbrook playoff experience?
I read the stat that I guess he gets like 9 feet of space when he's open or something like that. Like they play that far off of him to shoot, and then he makes these shots, which has been awesome for the Nuggets. And also, I want to say, I'm sure he was wearing something immaculate during his press conference, right? I mean, it was a Russell Westbrook outfit, I'm sure.
He had shades on, yeah. He had a beanie on, yeah.
And I don't know how many times in this series he would just come up and steal the ball from guys and just take it in for a dunk, like from Zubac or from Harden or anybody like that. Like and I saw George Karl actually tweet this, that Russell Westbrook was what they were missing against Minnesota last year in Game 7, that, for lack of a better term, that jerk. And he's kind of just a jerk on the court. And I think that this Nuggets team has not had that in a long time. And I think he's been a key. And I'm going to say this, and then he's going to do something silly in the next couple games, and people are going to want him cut during the playoffs. So I don't know. It's been Nikola Jokic wanted Russell Westbrook on this team, and I think that's how Nuggets fans have to look at it. There's a reason for that.
Yeah, and I mean, it was the best 3-point. I tweeted this out after the game. I said there's just a lot of great stats. Russell Westbrook was 13 of 31 on threes, which is just under 42%. He obviously only played 6 games in the series, but it's the highest he's ever shot from 3 in a single series in his entire career. And his previous best was his first ever playoff series against the Lakers in 2010, which he also shot a little bit over 41%. And Chris, you mentioned how wide open he is. Just kind of looking up the advanced stats here. Every 3-pointer he took in the series was he was given at least 4 feet of space, and that's considered the 4 to 6 space. 4 to 6 feet is considered open, and then 6+ is considered wide open, which was the wide majority of his threes. And he shot 46% on the wide open threes. And that's the series right there, if you're going to be, if we're being honest. But I obviously do want to give some other guys their flowers. And Chris, I wanted to go back to something you said about Christian Braun and just kind of becoming a guy and becoming part of this core, because obviously the original question I posed to Vinny was who's more surprising in the series, Christian Braun or Russell Westbrook? And I do think that the right answer is Russell Westbrook. But Chris, for you, with Christian Braun and how impressive he was in this series, how much more confidence do you have now with him obviously going up against maybe the toughest cover in the league for a guard after just seeing what he did against James Harden? Where are you with Christian Braun and the confidence you have in him as a guy, not just defensively, but what he's been able to do offensively as well?
Well, I think, first of all, him finishing 4th in most improved player seems like a bit of a ripoff. I think he was probably should have been a little bit higher.
The Nuggets will probably be busting those shirts out in round 2 on the off days. Yeah.
I think this series is going to prove that he needs to play defense without fouling, and that because that's what Shai's going to try to get those fouls. And I think this is going to be his biggest challenge. We've talked about last year that he probably guarded Anthony Edwards better than KCP did in that Minnesota series.
He definitely did, yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, I just think that he is, like Nikola Jokic said, he's just a winner. I mean, I still remember in the finals, he had that big game in Miami in the finals, and he had that big game yesterday. He hit threes. My only worry is there are times where he seems hesitant to shoot the ball every once in a while, but I feel like he gets through that. He's going to try to dunk on Chet Holmgren at some point. I don't know how it's going to go for him, but he's going to try to do it. And, there are times with Michael Porter Jr. being injured, he could be the third most important Nugget on the floor.
Yeah, that is a good point. I feel like he probably was. Maybe I still like Aaron Gordon maybe got that in the Clippers series, but there are times in games certainly where he is that important. And if you look at kind of the individual lineup stats and things like that throughout the playoffs, I think the Nikola Jokic, Jamal Murray, Christian Braun lineup is one of the more effective three-man lineups so far in the postseason. So that kind of backs up your point there, Chris. But Vinny, two last things I wanted to hit on with you before we move on to OKC. Nikola Jokic's relatively quiet series. I think it was only the third time in his playoff career that he had multiple games with fewer than 20 points in the same series. The first time it happened was his first ever postseason series against the Spurs in 2019, and the other one was against the Clippers again in the bubble. But he had multiple games under 20 points, like I said, only the third time it's ever happened. But he obviously averages a triple-double. What was your overall takeaway of how Nikola approached the series, and do you just feel like that's probably going to have to ratchet up a little bit going forward here into the second round?
Yeah, it's definitely going to have to ratchet up if the Nuggets have any hope of getting past the Thunder here. But I think my biggest takeaway from his performance in the Clippers series is just how good Ivica Zubac is. Like,
he's awesome.
I haven't seen many guys like stand up to Jokic's physicality, and there were times Zoo like bumped Jokic off his spot offensively, which is another thing you don't see happen very often. So I wanted to give Zoo his flowers real quickly because I think he was really impressive, primarily defensively and doing it without fouling. David Adelman was certainly frustrated with Joker's whistle after Game 6, but the Clippers also, I thought, did a really good job of mixing up coverages. There were times where Nick Batum was on him, throwing zones, different things at Joker. And I think he kind of played into the lack of a whistle at times. It felt like there were times where Joker was trying to highlight contact and ended up turning it over in a game where they weren't calling those like touch fouls on the perimeter. So yeah, they're definitely going to need him to be a little bit more assertive and more dominant here in the second round.
And the last thing, Vinny, I want to hit on with you from the Clipper series was Peyton Watson, because this will transition into the talking about OKC as well, because of how much deeper the Thunder are just on the surface, and not just in terms of production they get from the bench, but the amount of guys they use too. It feels like Peyton Watson is going to be a huge factor in the series, because the Nuggets are going to need, it feels like, 7 guys to play a big role, to give the starters rest, because the Thunder are going to go 8, maybe even 9 deep again still in this second round series. And Peyton was so impressive, I thought, in Game 7. Like, you go into a game like that expecting, you're hoping 4 of your starters are on it, and that's just kind of how it is. But like we talked about, it was an everyone else game for the Nuggets, and Russell Westbrook was a huge part of that, but Peyton Watson was too. 4-4 from the field, knocked down a 3 really confidently, blocks a shot like he usually does, grabs a couple rebounds, scores 9 points. He was a -5. I think that was because he was a victim of the late bench run that the Clippers were making. He was out there with some of the other end of the bench guys for the Nuggets. How impressed were you by Peyton, especially after last season getting played off the floor and not being a part of the Wolves series, kind of getting replaced by Justin Holiday in the rotation, and now to this point becoming a guy that David Adelman seems to really trust, and that's just got to be a great sign for the Nuggets heading into this Thunder series.
Yeah, and Peyton's a guy who's always talks about he's ready for the moment. He's not not going to back down. He's not going to be bothered by pressure.
Very confident guy. Yeah.
Yeah. But, it's not like a Christian Braun situation where, Christian Braun played in a ton of NCAA tournament games at Kansas, won a national championship there. Peyton didn't have that like wealth of experience, like big game experience. He didn't play much in his lone year at UCLA. To your point, like wasn't a part of the Timberwolves series last year. I think he played some meaningful minutes against the Lakers, but not many.
Didn't play at all in the 23 finals run as well. Yeah.
So this is like his first real opportunity to say like, yeah, I'm a playoff player, and to show up and have that kind of performance in a Game 7. I think it is really impressive and really important moving into this Oklahoma City series. And I'm also going back to, I believe it was the last Nuggets Thunder matchup of the regular season in Oklahoma City. The Nuggets win a game in OKC without Aaron Gordon, and I think Peyton Watson hit 3 or 4 threes in that game against the Thunder, who were daring him to shoot, and I think that's gonna continue in this series. So
he was 4 of 4 from 3 in that game, by the way, which they scored 140 points. The Nuggets did as a team.
Yes, I remember that. Yeah,
that's the one. So obviously you're not going to expect him to be perfect in this upcoming series, but for him to have that the experience of Game 7 and the experience of having played well in Oklahoma City, which is another building that is a pretty intimidating road environment. Like they love their Thunder, and it's going to be loud there. So I think the combined experience between yesterday's Game 7 and the last game he played in Oklahoma City, I think has to be pretty encouraging.
All right, let's transition to talking about the Oklahoma City series. The team split in the regular season, like Vinny mentioned. They had that weird back-to-back in Oklahoma City in March, where the Thunder take Game 1, and then, like I said, the Nuggets put up 140 to 127 in the second game of that little 2-game series there. Nikola Jokic and Jamal Murray combined for 69 points in that second game. So there's that, and but the Nuggets have struggled recently against the Thunder, especially at Ball Arena. The Thunder have come in and played really well. I still very vividly remember the Shai Gilgeous-Alexander game winner that he hit in December of 2022. The Thunder were still kind of a younger and up and coming team at that point, and Shai kind of comes in, and I think they were a little bit undermanned. It was early days with Chet and everything, and Chet I think had like 10 blocks in the game. It was last season. It wasn't 2022-23. It was last season, but it was close to Christmas when the Nuggets played the Thunder twice in December at home, and Shai hit a game winner. It was kind of the arrival of like, okay, the Thunder are here now, kind of a game against the defending champs at that point. The Thunder obviously go on and got the 1 seed last year as well. Chris, for you, what are your feelings about the Thunder team? Like, this is the only time they've only played the Thunder once in the postseason since they moved to Oklahoma City. Obviously, the Thunder and Sonics had a pretty rich history, especially in the 90s there with the very famous 8-1 upset with Dikembe Mutombo and those guys. But since they moved to Oklahoma City, they've only played them once in the postseason. That was in 2011, first round series. Thunder won it 4-1. That was the year the Thunder went on to the finals and lost to the Heat with Durant and Westbrook and all those guys. What are your feelings lately about this Thunder squad? How terrifying are they? Is it just SGA? Is it Chet? Is it all of it? Just kind of how are you feeling going into this one against OKC?
I also think that series was right after they traded Carmelo Anthony.
It was because it was the same season that they traded Carmelo at January, February, because it was like Gallo and Wilson Chandler and all those guys in that 2011 series. They kind of had no shot. Yeah.
I think it was a 4-5 series too, if I'm not mistaken.
I don't remember exactly what seeding it was, but
the
I do
Thunder
remember
went on to the finals, so maybe it was like a 3-6.
But I do remember the Thunder 1 and 5. That's I remember.
Yeah. And also, I think that game you were talking about with the game winner from Shai, I don't think Jokic played in that game. I feel like he didn't play in that game. Am I wrong on that?
I'll look that up quick, but I think he didn't. I was at that game. I remember.
And I also feel like that was this.
Nikola did play. I think KCP was the only starter that didn't play because Justin Holiday was in the lineup or starting lineup around Murray, Gordon, Porter, and Jokic.
Oh man, Justin Holiday there. That's a memory for
He's got. Anyway, I mentioned him twice on this podcast now. I never thought that was going to happen. The guy's in Italy right now hooping, and now he's getting 2 mentions on this podcast.
he played meaningful minutes against the Timberwolves. It was insane that Malone started relying on him. But with the Thunder, I mean, like you said, they go 8, 9 deep, maybe even 10 deep if you want. I mean, and that's just something the Nuggets don't have right now. I think the Thunder are terrifying. I really do. I think, we'll get the predictions, I'm sure, on here, but I think the Nuggets can win 1 or 2 games in this series just because Nikola Jokic is who he is, and Jamal Murray has that 40-point ability that he showed in the Clippers series. I think that's possible, but I mean, they are just a terrifying team. They are more than Shai. They're Jalen Williams. They're Chet. They're Alex Caruso off the bench. They're Lou Dort on defense. Lou Dort can hit some threes. I mean, there's that too. And Cason Wallace is a good player. They are just, and what's cool about both these teams is I mean, I know the Thunder traded for Shai, but they traded for Shai when he was really young. Both these teams are homegrown. These are teams that people, except for Aaron Gordon on the Nuggets, they traded for him, but it's a pretty much like build from the bottom kind of teams. And I think that's really cool. And, even those 2 games in Oklahoma City in whatever that was, March, whatever, the first game I think was close for like 3 quarters, wasn't it? Or like maybe 2.5 quarters. And then the Thunder kind of blew them out, if I remember right. So I think, but like you said, that's an intimidating place to play. The Nuggets are really up against it in this series, I would say.
Yeah, in round 1, the Thunder played 9 guys at least 13 minutes per game.
Yeah.
That's I'm not sure if Peyton Watson averaged 13 minutes a game in the series, and he was the Nuggets' 7th man. And Jalen Pickett I guess DeAndre Jordan would have been the 8th man, I guess, in the series. Him and Jalen Pickett kind of combined for that spot, with them kind of flipping roles at one point in the series. But you look. The only 2 guys that played above 30 minutes per game in the series were SGA and J-Dub. So that just kind of tells you how deep they were. And some of the games were really big blowouts. I think the Nuggets or the Thunder won by 50 at one point in one of the games against the Grizzlies. But Vinny, for you, obviously the Jokic SGA thing is going to be a talking point going into the series and throughout the series, because it's going to be announced at some point during the series. We mentioned this yesterday. It will probably maybe it'll be a game before Game 5 thing in OKC where SGA is presented with the award. Well, that'll obviously come. I don't want to talk too much about that, because on the previous episode I did give my MVP picks and my All NBA, all that kind of my fake ballot stuff. I did want to talk a little bit about how the Jokic matches up against this Thunder team, because it is a little bit of a different iteration from the previous couple of years with Hartenstein being there now. Does it feel a little bit to you like they're built like the Timberwolves were last year, where they have 2, you kind of have your best defender in Chet playing off of Jokic and kind of playing free safety, and putting Hartenstein in the kind of the Karl-Anthony Towns role of playing on ball against Jokic? Or is that something that maybe Jalen Williams, J-Dub plays? How are you expecting the Thunder to go about guarding Jokic?
Yeah, I think I'd start with the Hartenstein on Jokic and let Chet kind of roam off of, it's probably Aaron Gordon, or maybe
got to be Aaron Gordon in the starting lineup.
Yeah. And that just feels like the best bet for OKC, just because I'm thinking about if you went Chet on Joker straight up, I think there's an outcome where Jokic puts Chet in foul trouble. He's just too big, too strong. And Chet is so valuable to them offensively that I feel like they should probably prioritize protecting him a little bit. So yeah, I think the Minnesota blueprint is probably the one for Oklahoma City to follow, and they've got the personnel, I think, to pull it off.
And Chris, in terms of Jamal Murray and all the guys that he's going to be guarded by in this series, it'll probably be Lou Dort to start, his fellow countryman. Alex Caruso is going to get some looks. Cason Wallace, a guy who I really like watching as well. Is there a matchup in this? Is it all about trying to get the best possible matchup and maybe trying to get SGA switched on to Jamal as much as possible? Because as much as I think SGA is a really an above average defender, he's certainly the weakest link in terms of the perimeter guys in the Thunder starting lineup. Now, that's probably more of a compliment to the other guys than anything, but is this all about just finding matchups for Jamal Murray? Because in that round one series, like I mentioned earlier, it felt like he was able to get to his spots and get looks that he wanted to get. It just, the shot wasn't falling. How much is this going to be matchup dependent? And where are your feelings on Jamal Murray going into this series as well?
Well, I want to say one thing I really enjoyed in the Clippers series was how mad Jamal Murray got at Norman Powell all the time. He really did not seem to like Norman Powell at all. I mean, he lifted him up. Was that in game 1 or 2? I can't remember which game that was where he picked him up. Was that 1 or 2?
Game 2. Yeah, it was
game 2. Yeah, there was that. And like, even yesterday with the Nuggets up big, like Powell would just drive into him as hard as he could. Like there seemed to be a little disdain there. But
is it shades of campaign as well? Because that was the guy that Jamal did not take. Really like guarding him in previous postseasons. Different calibers of player, but it was kind of that gave me those vibes. Yeah.
But this feels like it could be a Jamal Murray series, but I just don't know how he gets his shot off. I think somehow, so I guess Shai would probably be on Christian Brown, probably if
the start. Yeah, he definitely will.
Yeah, I mean, do you have Christian Brown set a pick on for Jamal Murray and see if they switch it, or I don't know. Like, it's going to be really tough because, like, we talked about this on the other podcast that like got Dort. Then you've got Alex Caruso after that. Then you've got Cason Wallace after that. I mean, they could throw Jay. I mean, and Shai's no slouch on defense either. So, I mean, this could be a very big Aaron Gordon series. If Michael Porter Jr. had 2 arms, it could be a big Michael Porter Jr. series as well. If he had, 2 working shoulders. But I mean, the Nuggets are going to have to work for everything. I think that this is definitely going to be like a playoff basketball series because I think they're going to have to work for every basket.
Yeah, I think the key for Jamal will be, it feels like the Nuggets, or the Thunder, have a very solid 7 guys with the starters and then Caruso and Wallace. And then the 8th guy is likely going to be Isaiah Joe or Aaron Wiggins, kind of whoever's shooting the ball well, because both those guys are really good shooters and have had really good seasons. It feels like as the series goes along, it'll kind of develop into one of those guys each night will be who Mark Daigneault trusts. I feel like it's got to be attacking whoever that is, whether it's Isaiah Joe or Aaron Wiggins, against the bench unit kind of thing early in the second quarters, and then in the non-Jokic minutes, just trying to get one of those guys switched on to him and cooking, because that's just going to have to be a matchup he exploits, because I do really feel like this has to be a big series for both Jokic and Murray. I think if the Nuggets have any shot in this series, and we'll get to predictions in a minute, this is going to have to be one where it's those 2 guys having a vintage series that we've seen them have obviously many times in the past, but they're going to have to dip into that 2023 form for me, for sure. Vinny, before we get into predictions, I want to wrap up with the David Adelman versus Mark Daigneault conversation, because as much as we've given David Adelman his credit for, and the entire coaching staff as well, Ryan Saunders and all the guys that Popeye Jones, all the guys that do stuff behind the scenes that we don't really see, they did a great job against Ty Lue and Jeff Van Gundy and that Clippers coaching staff. This is another maybe even equal or greater challenge with what Mark Daigneault has been able to do the last couple of years. And just the way he talks and thinks about the game is really fascinating. What are you looking for in terms of the coaching adjustment matchups between these 2 staffs as the series progresses?
Yeah, it's going to be really interesting because, Mark Daigneault certainly has more tools at his disposal, or has, the personnel presents itself with so many more options that I think, we're about to learn a lot about David Adelman. I think, one thing we can take away from the Clippers series is DA is not afraid to try something a little out of the box. I think the first defensive possession of the series, the Nuggets just jumped out in a 3-2 zone.
Why not, man? Why not?
They did
a little bit in Game 7 too. Yeah.
Yeah. They did, yeah.
So I think that's gonna, one thing that's gonna have to continue, and it might go miserably and it might blow up in DA's face. But I think he's in a position where he's gonna have to take some risks. He's gonna have to gamble a little bit, and I think he's gonna have to lean into kind of the creativity, because Oklahoma City's so deep, so versatile. I think Mark Daigneault, to your point, brilliant basketball mind. He's smart enough to have a Creighton Blue Jay on his staff in Grant Gibbs. So for those of you who had the over 0.5 Creighton mentions, congratulations.
That was like negative 200, to be honest.
Yeah, that was an easy bet. Yeah, I mean, now I don't know if anyone bet on Justin Holiday references because that would have been a better bet.
No, that one you would have gotten some really, really good odds on. The over
Yeah.
1.5, over 1.5 Justin Holiday mentions. Yeah, that one you would have been eating good after that one. Yeah. All right, guys, let's get into our predictions quick. And so give me who you got, how many games, and what is the overlying storyline for the Nuggets after this series. Chris, you can go first.
I'm going to go Thunder in 6. I think the Nuggets do steal a game 1 or 2, and we get the Nuggets have championship pedigree storyline. The Thunder are inexperienced, and then maybe they split here, and then I think the Thunder do to the Nuggets what the Nuggets did to the Clippers in Game 5, where they kind of blow them out. But I just think the Thunder then come back here and win in 6 games. And I just think then we head into an offseason that's full of questions. I just think, has Adelman done enough to be the regular coach going forward? Are they trading someone in the offseason? You know, who's the GM? What is the future? And there were times in that Clippers series where I said, as a fan and even as an observer in this business that we're in, oh, you can't break up a championship core. And then there were other times like, oh my God, I think one of these guys has to go. So, I mean, I don't know. Like, I just think there's still so much uncertainty. And I think, I don't know, unless they beat the Thunder, I still think we're facing a big summer of uncertainty.
Vinny?
Yeah, I'm agreeing with Chris, and I think it's going to be Thunder in 6. And, you know, while that sounds competitive, I don't know if the Thunder wins are going to make it. I don't know. I think the Thunder win comfortably in, 3 of these games. And I think after the series, we're looking at it, and it's just like, yeah, the Nuggets there's a pretty big gap between the Thunder and the Nuggets. And then it's like, then we're having the conversations of, given the roster construction and the luxury or second apron constraints, how do the Nuggets close this gap? And I think I don't think there's a good answer. But I think we're going to be all looking at the fact that, Oklahoma City is kind of in a class of its own in the Western Conference, and how the Nuggets go about trying to get on that level is going to be really tricky. And, especially considering the likelihood that there's going to be a, new decision maker inheriting this roster and being tasked with charting the best path forward. It doesn't feel like it's going to be easy for anybody, but I think after this series, there are going to be a lot of really tough questions that need to be answered.
They trade for Giannis. That's the answer.
You cook something up in trade machine and you get back to me on that one.
Yeah, right.
Let me know what the one first round pick the Nuggets
Julian
have.
Strawther and Peyton Watson or something like that. They just don't think they'll do that.
I think Milwaukee probably says no, but I'll get back to
probably,
that one.
Who says no?
I agree with you guys. I'm gonna stick with the prediction I had before the postseason. I had the Nuggets beating the Clippers in 7. I had the Thunder sweeping the Grizzlies. I have the Thunder beating the Nuggets in 5. I fully agree with both of what you guys said in various parts. But Vinny, with what you said about how this series is going to show that the Nuggets aren't really that close to the Thunder. And even whether it's 5 or 6 games, I think that could be true either way. And I think whoever the GM is that comes in over the summer, it depends on who that is and their mindset on things. But I think it's going to be a very hard conversation about looking at how the team is structured around Nikola Jokic, because I think there's only a couple guys that are probably untouchable regardless. But I've talked about this a little bit after Malone and Booth were fired. That I do think it might just be time for the Nuggets to rethink how they build this roster around Nikola Jokic, because at the stage that he is in his career, he's still, the best offensive player in the league by far, the best overall player in the league by far. And his offensive game has just gotten to such a level where I do think he can be an offense by himself, and it might get to a point where you're breaking up this core and 2 of these guys are gone. And you're just trying to get as young and as deep as possible surrounding Nikola Jokic, because that just might be the new model in this era of the aprons and in the CBA and all that is unfolding. and there's even already been talks of teams like the Celtics that might have to break things up for this summer with how expensive their roster is going to be. I just think we're headed towards some of those really uncomfortable conversations where this team is going to look a lot different when we all get back together in September for training camp, and then when the season starts in October. So I'm going to stick with my guns, and I'm going to go Thunder in 5 because I had the Thunder losing to the Celtics in the finals. I may end up regretting that pick in a month or so, but I just don't think there's a way the Thunder don't get to the finals with how good they've been all season. So that's what I'm going to go with. And obviously, you guys probably feel the same way about this Thunder team right now. It just feels like they're on that path to at least getting to the finals. So appreciate you guys coming on to talk about the Clipper series and looking ahead. I'll wrap this up by looking at the schedule ahead. Obviously, it's only one game in between the first 4 games. So probably won't do a podcast in between there. We'll see what it's like after game 4. Probably hop on back then. But we'll have some more college basketball talk this week for sure. And then, as May progresses, definitely get into looking back at some of the teams in the transfer portal stuff that has finally started to shake itself out. So a lot coming on this feed after a relatively quiet last couple weeks or so. So appreciate everybody listening to this. Make sure to go subscribe on Apple, Spotify, subscribe to my YouTube channel if you're watching the episodes on there. Every episode is on Spotify, Apple, and on YouTube. So leave a comment, like, review, all that stuff is super appreciated. So thanks again to Vinny and Chris, my colleagues at the Denver Gazette, for coming on to talk to hoops today, to talk Nuggets. We also did a Denver Gazette sports podcast, which you can also find on Spotify and Apple as well, if you're interested in that. A little bit different look at the Thunder series. Tried to change things up a little bit for the trio of us. But great conversation, I felt like. And thanks everybody again for listening, and enjoy the week of basketball.